A couple weeks ago, I was with some family on Father's Day, and my dad started telling stories about his dad, my grandfather, who passed on many years ago now. He was in World War II, and we always knew that about him, but I didn't know any of the details. And for whatever reason, on this particular day, my dad decided to share a lot of this stuff with us for whatever reason. Stuff that I didn't know about. As the story goes, he was a tail gunner on one of the planes that were used at this time in the 1940s. One of the first things my dad told me was when his dad explained to him, I have no idea how many people we actually killed. Men, women, children. We were dropping bomb after bomb after bomb, and I was firing that gun the whole time I was in the plane. And right away, the weight of that really sits on you in the moment that you hear it. What a burden that is for anyone to carry. In my mind, I'm instantaneously interpreting what that might feel like. Obviously, I can't relate because nothing like that has transpired in my life, but thinking about carrying that weight and how it might affect somebody is unbelievable. No wonder soldiers come back from war with PTSD. Seeing what they see and just dealing with that whole situation. It's unreasonable to ask these individuals to try to reintegrate into this clown world society that was not involved in what they were involved with. War is absurd. What an absurd thing. Especially when you begin to understand how they start and why they start. How every little aspect of them is orchestrated behind the scenes as mass sacrifice rituals that spill blood in the way that apparently it must be done to please whatever is in control of this world currently. But anyways, as my dad was continuing the story, on one of these days in particular, the plane that my grandfather was in exploded in midair. It was hit by something, and it split in half. And he was in the tail section, had to figure out that had just transpired, realizing, I guess, in the moment, I didn't die, even though this plane I'm in just exploded. And, he had to get his mind around the fact that he needed to get ready to jump out of the plane and parachute down to the ground, right? And that's exactly what he did. Him and a few other survivors from the plane exploding end up on the ground behind enemy lines, as it were, and they have to hide. And he said one of the ways that they remained undetected was by using silk maps, because the paper maps would make noise that the other soldiers looking for them could hear. They would hear the rustling of the papers as these other soldiers were trying to look at the map to find their way out of the war zone. So they had these silk maps that they were using that didn't make any noise when they were trying to look at them. And eventually, as the story was told to me, they figured out that they weren't going to be able to get out of there. They couldn't read the maps. They had no idea where they were. And ultimately they were found by people who knew that they had gone down, and they got them out of there. And my mind was just racing through this whole story because there's so many permutations to a single event like that, and how it affected so many different aspects of so many different people's lives. Just my family in general, right? There's the whole idea of epigenetics, the concept that we pass down experiences and energetic imprints through the DNA into successive generations. It's like a stored memory. There have been studies done along these lines as it relates to pregnant females who have certain experiences, and those experiences are transferred into the womb and the child then carries that experience with them. But this is something a little deeper, where going back generations, even the things that the child in the womb didn't experience directly through the mother in those 9 months is transferred through the genetic blueprint, through the DNA. And this is generational information that gets passed down bloodlines. Speaking of that which is in control of this world, through the rituals that they use to bring figures that will play significant roles into the world, this process would allow that type of thing to infuse the figure with certain qualities or memories. And that's all conducted in conjunction with various cosmic and planetary cycles and the whole thing. But as it relates to us and just the human species as a whole, then there are these energetic imprints that are infused into the DNA that is transferred from generation to generation to generation. And that would be scalar in nature, right? You have the human species level where things are passed down to every single human being that's born into this world. We have these imprinted memories that have come all the way down through the original human beings. However that story goes, whether it was some kind of genetic manipulation or it was the actual first 2 human beings created by God, as the story of Adam and Eve tells it, however that really transpired, the imprint is from there to all human beings. And then within that, you have the imprints that are transferred into individual bloodlines of the human species. And it's very complex, right? Because you have the father's imprints and the mother's imprints. As we get closer to test tube babies, as it were, it makes you wonder about whether those will even be human beings, because you're breaking that chain. It's genetic blueprints that are used to create a human being in the same way, but it's being done through artificial means that's cut off from the natural process where this imprinting takes place. This is probably why clones, if they exist, would be similar to a human being, but would also not be human in that way, right? Because they were created in a lab somewhere. Genetically, you can test them and they're identical to whoever they were a clone of. But spiritually, they are not alive in the same way because they've been cut off from the way that something is naturally brought into this world ordinarily. This is all to say that me, coming into the bloodline that I came into, I was imprinted with this experience that my grandfather went through in World War II. The trauma of that event was infused into his genetic memory. And like many other young men of his generation, he comes back from the war and he has a bunch of kids. Having survived that experience, he's sitting there thinking, all right, well, I guess I'm alive. I'll get married and have some kids and try to live a normal life. And I could go into detail about how he coped with that experience, and all of that is kind of irrelevant. I'm more focused on the infusion of that experience and how it was transferred into all of his kids and then into me through my dad, who was one of his kids, right? Even describing the experience, I get this visceral understanding of it, even though I obviously didn't go through it. It's like I can almost tap into some kind of memory that still exists out in the ether somewhere. The morphogenetic field of collective human memory stores it, and it's like I can tap into it in some way that other people can't because it's unique to my bloodline. We have a stronger connection to that in a way that I can't tap into theirs and whatever has happened into their bloodline. And this is where you get into ideas of generational curses and things that have been going on in certain bloodlines because people don't understand how this all works, and they don't understand why their situation is the way that it is because they're just unaware most of the time. Obviously, the bloodlines serving that which is in control of this world understand it, and they willingly engage in it, give themselves to it. But most ordinary people don't understand that's what's going on. And that's just one experience that one of my grandparents had. Obviously a very impactful one, very traumatic, but still, it's only one. You're adding up all of my grandfather's experiences, all of my grandmother's experiences, and then their parents and their parents' parents. And on it goes, right? An almost incalculable amount of collective experience that is infused into you when you are born into this world. Then, on top of that, there's just the miraculous nature of the whole thing, right? You're in a plane, it explodes in half, and somehow you don't die in that explosion, and you're able to jump out of the plane, parachute down to the ground, and survive to get back to the United States. And we were all in that room hearing this story, and I said out loud at one point, guys, do you realize how insane this is? If that plane had exploded in a different spot, none of us would be in this room right now. You can't even comprehend the miraculous nature of that. And you say that and then immediately realize that there were people on that plane who did not survive. And in that way, it erased an entire bloodline of people, and it was discontinued. And you're thinking to yourself, well, how is that fair, right? And these are all questions that are just beyond my pay grade. I have no idea why things happen the way they do, why some people survive moments like that, and other people don't, and how that plays into larger agendas and plans. I mean, I have no idea. I can't explain any of that. It's just this thing that is transpiring every second of every day on planet Earth. I mean, this was one day during World War II. Think about how many times a similar thing happened during just that one war. How many explosions took place like that? How many guns were fired on a field of soldiers? Some people hit, some people not. Miraculous survivals. The whole thing is just, how do I even try to explain something like that, right? The human mind is not capable of explaining the complexity of existence in this way. Hopefully I've shown it in that way, where you see how you just can't wrap your mind around it. And this should humble you. This should make you want to kneel on the ground right now as you're listening to this and say, yeah, I am not God, right? Like, I cannot even presume to have that kind of understanding or power. I have no power whatsoever. This whole thing is beyond me. I am in service of it, that which created me, that which orchestrates this kind of thing. This is happening every day. Some people get in their car in one city, and a bunch of other people get in a car in a different city, and they are going to different places. They're driving on the road, and by some mixture of coincidence and fates, their two cars end up hitting each other in an accident, and some of the people in the cars don't survive it. And the permutations of that event are endless, as it affects all of the people involved and everyone they're related to, everybody they know. This isn't even just bloodlines, right? This is everyone they have contact with. Co-workers, friends. It's endless permutations. And you add up the numbers in terms of the amount of people that are engaged in these activities every single day, the collective births and deaths, it's impossible to quantify the magnitude of what we are experiencing being alive. Like I was saying, war is one of the most absurd things in existence. And it's easy to become depressed when you're faced with its effects. You look at it and you add it to the list of all the other tragedies that people are experiencing. Not just life and death on a daily basis, but smaller tragedies, having enough food to eat, relationships ending, broken hearts, things along those lines. You add that to the list of all the things that are intentionally being done through society to us, and it's very easy to lose hope and faith in anything having meaning. But I think that misses the point of just how much power you actually have, not in terms of being able to do anything on your own, but in terms of collectively what could be achieved if people wrapped their minds around the reality of the situation. For example, as it relates to the military, if every single soldier on planet Earth woke up tomorrow morning and said, I am laying down my gun, I will not fire it again ever under any circumstances. What do you think the effect of that would be? Well, war is immediately over for good. There can be no war without the soldiers who pull the trigger for those who orchestrate everything behind the scenes. What if every non-bloodline member, though I'm talking to you guys too, but what if every non-bloodline member of every 3-letter agency in every country around the world said, you know what, we're not going to do this spying thing anymore. We're not going to orchestrate all this anymore. We're laying down our guns too, metaphorically speaking, right? I mean, of course they use guns, but they're more using their minds to do this stuff. We're laying down our script writing. Well, that whole thing is over immediately too, because you need the plausible deniability of actual real people being involved in these organizations to sell everything that's going on through the media. So if you take that away, well, the whole thing's over at that point. I would like to see that world where all those guns were laid down, right? And I would imagine that's probably in the script somewhere where some kind of fake version of that will take place. Hey guys, war is over. I think that's the whole point of the one world government thing. We fixed it. We did it. No more fighting. That's probably in the script somewhere there, but I'm talking about the real thing, right? I'm not talking about the totalitarian endgame where it's the illusion of freedom, but freedom is slavery. I'm talking about the real thing where we actually laid our guns down before that endgame and how the world might look just a couple weeks after that transpired. But easier said than done, right? What if that soldier has kids and firing that gun is how the kids eat? Who's going to be the first to risk their children starving, you know? It's a difficult thing for a mind that has been conditioned with the concept of artificial scarcity for every moment that it's been alive to come to terms with transcending. And it's easy for me to make it seem like it would be so easy. But nothing about any of this is easy. It's only in theory that it's easy, like anything else. When you actually have to put the work in, you realize that nothing that is worth anything comes without effort. You sit there and you say, you know what? I want to lose weight and look better. That would be amazing. I like that idea. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody woke up one morning and said, I want to be in the best possible shape I can be in? Well, that's kind of similar to what I described about everybody laying down their guns. And then you actually realize, oh, well, there's a lot that goes into this that I actually have to change and sacrifice in order to achieve this. But it's easy to say, sounds great, but then in practice it's much more difficult. It requires discipline. And that's interesting because it's related to another thought I was having about the nature of addiction, as that relates to all of these thoughts that can lead you to feeling very depressed about the state of the world, especially when you talk about war and just the horrific things that transpire when that is taking place. And that's what addiction is. It's a mindset that feeds on itself. I can't say this with certainty, but based on the circumstantial evidence, it seems clear that whatever is orchestrating all of this on planet Earth currently is addicted to spilling blood. It's addicted to creating the circumstances where we do that to ourselves through our own addictions, our own ability to be deceived, our own ability to deceive ourselves, in combination with the conditions that are presented to us to create that result. We have all that other stuff I was talking about earlier about generational trauma and the infusion of certain energies into your very DNA that informs your structure as a being. And I'm not talking about your bones and your blood and all of that, though it's related. I'm talking about the structure of your being that you can't see with your eyes. That is a derivative of that which created you. So, for example, there's all kinds of stuff coming into your stream of consciousness through that, at the same time that you're getting it through the mainstream. Best exemplified by the screens, where the media is beamed into your eyes. But there are all kinds of other things that are involved in that situation as well, to the point where you reach this stage where you're just feeling unalive. Ultimately, that's the root of every addiction, right? You're feeling disconnected from life. And from there, you construct this elaborate narrative for why you feel the way you do. And usually this is blaming someone else, right? Though, of course, there could be aspects of that involved where other people have done things to you that contribute to all of this. But I'm talking more in general where you look at situations and you say, oh, it's that person's fault. They did this to me. This person always does this to me. And you don't look at your own actions or anything that you're doing to create these conditions for that person to even do those things. You're not taking an honest look at yourself. You create this elaborate narrative to justify your behavior. And you say, oh man, I'm just feeling lonely. No one understands things in the way that they are. I just can't do this anymore. You know, I just need to detach for a while. This is all too much. I'm going to smoke a joint. I can't do it anymore. Or whatever kids do these days, right? I'm going to vape. Interestingly, there was just a story that came out about how the vapes are worse than cigarettes, because of course they are. It's like when they come out with the BPA-free cans, and they say, oh, we got that BPA out of there. And you look into it a little bit more, and they just switched it to this other one that's just as bad. but now they can market the fact that it's not BPA. So as one toxic chemical that is poisoning us is discovered, they just replace it with another one that doesn't have that negative marketing associated with it. It's like Bayer buying Monsanto and then trying to rebrand Roundup, kind of similar along those lines. It's like anything else. If you want the effects of nicotine, you either need to find that in its purest form that has no man-made chemicals involved in it at all, which would mean actually growing tobacco plants and drying it and curing it yourself. Then you might be able to use it medicinally as it was originally intended. But this is the whole point. When you're feeling disconnected at that root level, even something that's medicinal, potentially, that could help you out of that, maybe move you in a direction that would reconnect you or help you get to that place where you bust through everything that's weighing you down, well, you abuse the thing, use it too much, and then it becomes a crutch and something you're addicted to. But it's not even so much you're chemically addicted to it as much as you're mentally addicted to the idea that this is helping you escape from things that you don't want to face. And I don't know, I can't speak with any authority on any of this, but that's got to be how these entities and human beings involved in the whole thing feel on some level. At a certain point, everything they've been promised just isn't going to cut it as it relates to what's going on internally for them when they are constantly poisoning other human beings, even if they want to sell themselves the idea that they just put it out there. They didn't force anybody to do it. People chose that on their own. Well, that's like saying you tell everyone the truth if they have the eyes to see it, and then you cut out their eyes, which is essentially what they do with mind control, right? They cut out your eyes, metaphorically, so you can't see what's really going on, and then they tell you. And they say, well, we told you. Well, that's kind of the same thing that's going on here. It's a lie you're telling yourself so that you feel better about the situation. But on some level, deep down, you have to feel that the juice is not worth the squeeze, that this addiction to spilling blood is just that. It's not a source of power, it's a disease. It's something that shouldn't be happening. And somewhere intuitively you must know that. You have to feel that. In the same way that intuitively, I know every time that I go back to one of my old addictions, I do it and I say, oh yeah, I remember why I used to do this. Oh, but now I see how it was doing this and doing that. I see how I was using it to escape all these other things. I get it now. And it's like, the point of this recording isn't to try to change anybody's mind on that level, because you're smarter than me. You know so much more than me. If I try to intellectualize with you, you'll just laugh. In the same way that I would laugh at my 7-year-old nephew trying to intellectualize with me. You know, it's just not even fair. You're incapable of doing it. Well, though I'll humor you, of course, and have fun with it. It's just not even a contest in terms of who's going to be able to manipulate that situation if they wanted to. It's not about changing your mind intellectually with some kind of logical argument. If I can be so bold as to present myself as a representative of humanity in just one small way, okay, I promise, in just one real small way, I would like to be an example that you have a little difficulty with. Because I know deep down, even those of you who your job is to like monitor us for the blood spillers, you know, or you're somehow connected into this, I know deep down, some of you guys and gals listen to this and you think, you know what? I would actually like to sit down and have a beer with this guy, I think. Like, I don't think I would want to hurt him. I think I just want to have a beer and talk about all this stuff. And that is what I'm trying to do here, if anything. I mean, just to be fully honest. It's not about any thought I've had. It's not about any movie I've seen and saw something in, or any of these news stories. I mean, that helps people see the spell, but what I'm really trying to do is just be an example of somebody that you just want to be friends with. Because I know how addictions work, and when I'm thinking of it from your perspective, when you are constantly encountering human beings who are, I don't know the right term to give them. I want to give them some benefit of the doubt, but trust me, it happens to me every time I get in my car. They're very selfish and inconsiderate, and they're capable of all kinds of things. And even I, when I am interacting with the herd, okay, I have my moments where I'm like, they're right about these people. They're just so insane. I can't take it. I mean, I have those moments too. So it's like, I can see how if you are constantly confronted with people who just are so detached from anything that's true and don't know anything, and they just present themselves in a certain way, you would see that as reasoning to continue with what you're doing. You say, oh yeah, they're right. These people deserve everything that's coming their way. I'm doing the right thing. I'm worried about my whole situation. I don't need to worry about them. That confirms it for me. So that is to say, I'm just trying to be a little splinter in your mind where you have that back there going, well, you know, there is that one guy, and of course I'm not the only one, but like, I'm one of the few that's actually putting it on the internet. There's that one guy, he doesn't seem that bad. Like, I think I could actually hang out with him. And that is the vibe, right, that I'm trying to push through my vocal cords to you, and also to anyone else who's listening, to hopefully influence you, to hopefully influence them to strive to conduct themselves in a similar way. Because to me, maybe I'm off base here, I don't know, this is like soldiers laying down their guns. You see, because I have laid down my righteous indignation. You know, I've laid down any illusion of being holier than thou. I couldn't be any less holy than anyone listening to this. I think about the things that I've done in my life. Even just like, I'll get real with you, okay? Let's have a real moment together. Even the act of masturbation is the least holy thing I can think of, right? Just the way you look when you do it, just the whole act of it. I was thinking of it even from the perspective of somebody who has really tried to remove the influence of that from my life, right? Like, no more watching porn, haven't done that in a long time, and just removing that whole thing. Still, when you sit there and actually make the decision, like, oh, I'm going to ejaculate and have an orgasm, and you have like the whole thing you do to do that, and then you're sitting there like making faces and just doing this, the whole thing, it's absurd, right? And so anybody who's doing that, which is, you know, the overwhelming majority of the human beings on the planet who are like capable of it, you know, we can exclude children who haven't reached puberty, and that's why they have that innocence to them. But other than that, and maybe some really, really older people who just don't have the ability anymore, the overwhelming majority of human beings, in part due to the mind control that's going on, right, are doing this thing. This sexual degeneration is everywhere. And the act of that is just so absurd. I don't even know why I started talking about that. Oh yeah, because it's like the idea of doing that and then, you know, presenting yourself to somebody as if you are enlightened or some equivalent of that. I hate that word, but everybody knows what I mean when I say that. Like, you've achieved some understanding that other people don't have. I mean, it's absurd, you know? Not to say that people can't have grades in their understanding of things. I mean, that's just the reality of the world. People are good at certain things and not good at other things, and that creates specialties. That's part of the beauty of individuality, right? Is we're not all equal. We're not all the same. We have our strengths and weaknesses, and that creates these very unique and awesome expressions of creation. And within those expressions, there are going to be human beings that are just better at certain things than others. And we just need to accept that. I don't know why that's so difficult and why there has to be this idea that no one can be better than the other person. That's absurd. That's just totally absurd. But within the context of all of that, it is absurd to look at the daily activities of the human being and everything that we do and think that you are in any way more evolved than anyone else. In terms of bodily functions, I mean, we're all just on the same level. We're all equal there, you know? But that's the reason that I focus so much on controlled opposition, because if you really pay attention to controlled opposition, they focus on getting you in a vibratory state that makes you unlikable. And that plays into the agenda in so many different ways. Of course, part of that is so they can point at this whole scene and say, look at how conspiracy theorists act. Look at what they sound like. These people are deranged. That's part of it. But then the other part of it is to just get you unable to make human connections with anyone other than conspiracy theorists. That locks you in the echo chamber. You all reinforce these wrong beliefs and you become militant about it. And you start calling them NPCs. And again, trust me, I understand. There are moments where I'm out there in the world and I think to myself, these NPCs, man, I can't do it anymore. Trust me, I get it, okay? I'm alive too. I'm in the world. But I recognize how that is something that's a program in my mind to detach me from everyone else. And ultimately, my agenda, if I have any agenda at all, is to be the same for any ordinary person that I would meet taking a walk on the street, and take that same mentality, that same approach, that same feeling and express it to Pindar, the head of the Illuminati. I mean, the Illuminati isn't even a real thing, right, in terms of that name, okay? But you know what I mean when I say that word, right? Like, you go to the very, very tip top of the human representative on planet Earth. I'd take that same mentality to that entity. And it would laugh at me like you would laugh at a child, I'm sure. But, in the back of its mind, it's like, I don't know what I want to do with this person. Do I want to remove them because they're kind of exposing some stuff here? Or do I want to sit down and have a beer with them? I can't decide. And that's it, right? It's just the indecisive feeling because you're challenging the underlying assumption of what we are. And that underlying assumption is what powers this whole thing, because it's coming from Satan, quote unquote, right? Who originally has this whole beef with that which created us, because we as creations, as the story goes, was something that it didn't like. So it wants to corrupt us. It didn't like how the whole thing went down. And it's like, no, God, look, I will prove to you that you're wrong about these people, these human beings you create. I'll show you how wrong you are. And so that's the underlying thought process, right? Is reinforcing that idea. See, this is what they really are. And then that reinforces the addiction in the same way where if I'm feeling lonely and detached and no one to talk to about any of this stuff, then the thought starts going, well, maybe you should just have a few beers. It's been 5 years since you had a beer. Just have one. Who cares? Just have a couple. And then guess what happens? The first night, you have a couple beers. Okay, I kind of remember why I used to do that originally. That was fun to chat with some other people who were doing the same thing and just have a night off. Just free my mind for a little bit. And I woke up the next morning feeling fine. That was good. Well, guess what happens? Then you say, I got this thing under control. No problem. And the next time you hang out with people, then you have 4 beers. And then the next time, oh, that was fun. Let's have 6. And then you're inevitably in the place where you wake up hungover and you say, oh, why did I do that? Oh, and you realize, oh, right, this is why I stopped drinking, because this is so stupid. So I understand that's what triggers the addiction. And so for the entities that are doing this to us, and the human beings too that are involved in it, like, the form of the addiction I'm talking about is you listening to this. If you're a regular person, like, you and how you act is potentially reinforcing them to do what they do. Now, I'm not telling you that they would stop if we all, collectively woke up one day and just became our perfected selves. I mean, I don't know. But I'm just talking about adding a little bit of pause into the situation, like, should we really be doing this? I mean, we got to start somewhere, right? If you just want to give up and leave the whole thing behind, that's fine. I mean, it's your life. You can do whatever you want. But in my experience, life is so much easier when you're just not trying to be something that you're not. That's the best advice I can give anybody. Just be who you are. And when you get to a certain level of understanding, being who you are is a reflection of that which created you, right? You can't get to that level, but you can at least reflect that frequency to those around you, and it becomes undeniable. In the way that it changes your life, they see how it changed your life, and they have questions. How did you do that? Why are you so different? Why do we never have problems when we hang out? Why are you never mad at me? Not to say that people don't do things that agitate me, of course, but I just see it in a different way, right? You just see it as something that is totally meaningless in the grand scheme of things. Not that I excuse behavior that's inexcusable. It's just seeing it in a way where maybe you need something really tragic to transpire in your life that puts things into perspective. And I think people who have had something like that happen just have a different perspective about what really matters. And you can't really inject that experience into somebody else, but everybody has had something close to that at least happen in their life in some way that you can draw upon it. I mean, for me, it was a major health issue where that put everything into perspective. And now I'm just in awe of the whole thing, right? I can't believe I'm alive and my body works. Well, this is amazing. And when that is your state of mind, nothing can bother you in the way that it used to. And that's it. It's just maybe reminding people of that. Maybe that's my whole purpose of being alive now, is just reminding people of that little fact. Because the way social media is, there's all kinds of similar things that are posted, but it's all done for likes and gaining subscribers and getting some kind of clout. They just pervert the whole thing. No, it's none of that. It's posting some tragic thing and dancing to it on TikTok. I mean, people have done this. Like, my husband died, and then there's some woman doing a TikTok dance, like posing next to her dying husband. And it's like, oh my God, humanity is in a real bad state. Right? We're in trouble. This is a problem. Even though she might be able to tell you something similar to what I'm telling you right now, going through losing her spouse, a very traumatic thing. That stuff happens all the time. And it's funny, right? It's so easy for me to pass that instantaneous judgment on that woman, but I forget everything that I talked about in this recording up until this point about the generational imprinting and how that works both in that woman's bloodline and for all of us as a whole, to the point where I have no idea what has transpired for the whole bloodline she comes from, like every branch of it. Like, what has been imprinted into her that led her to that spot where she decided to do that? Had this moment where she was so detached from God that she, engaged in this act that the majority of us look at and go, oh man, what are you doing? Don't put your dying husband on screen like that and use him as a prop for your TikTok video. What are you doing? It's easy to forget all of that. In the same way that you have no idea what just someone has been through in their own individual life. I mean, I learn this all the time as I get deeper and deeper with people, and then they tell me something and I say, oh, wow, I never would have even guessed that had happened for you. And that explains so much. if you just stay patient and stick with people long enough, they'll explain why they are the way they are. If you do it in a way that makes them feel safe. And that's what I'm trying to relate to you. It's this vibe, right? It's this frequency that you put off that puts people at ease. Because you're not pretending to be something that you're not, and you're truly and genuinely listening to them and interested in helping them in any way that you can in terms of what small amount of wisdom you've been able to acquire through your life up until that point. Maybe I can offer you something that will help, but if not, I'll just listen. You can just tell me, because some people just need somebody to listen to them. And it's the same thing. Even somebody like that, who maybe you've had a spotty relationship with in the past when you were both really stupid and didn't know anything, they look at you and you say, I don't really think I feel like that anymore. I don't know what to do with this. And it's the same for the people who are orchestrating all of this behind the scenes, right? Putting that splinter in their mind like, I've been doing this for a long time, and I felt very justified judging all of the behaviors I was seeing from the useless eaters, as it were. And I felt very justified. But now, I don't know. I'm seeing some of these examples all over the world of people who are kind of making me second guess this whole thing. Because ultimately, that would be amazing. If I could sit down and just have a conversation with whatever is doing this so that I could understand it. I know if I could just hear them talk long enough, I would be able to at least understand it. I would never agree with it, Logically, I'm sure it makes sense. But it's like, if I could just listen, if I could just be in this position to listen and then understand it, I feel like I would have the same moment that I'm talking about with a regular person in my life where I go, oh, that's it. I get it now. And maybe they have already told us through the whole story that's in the Bible, The whole thing's there maybe already. But still, it would be useful to hear it in modern language from somebody who's actually involved in it in that way. But anyway, just talking about the way all this stuff works, God is my witness. On Father's Day, at the end of hearing this story, a storm rolls in. And there are these dark, black clouds. So dark to the point where the kids that were there all sat in chairs looking out the window at the storm. And they were enthralled by it. And, I don't know, a half hour maybe, it was thundering and lightning and raining for a little bit. It was a storm that came through. It's the summertime, a little thunderstorm. And I swear, as soon as the storm passed, this magnificent, unbelievable double rainbow appeared in the sky. It was the most amazing rainbow I've seen in my whole life. It was incredible. And it was a twin rainbow, and I'm laughing to myself, thinking, oh my gosh, all those videos I did on Oz and this whole thing that's going on and, the rainbow as it relates to that. I'm not even getting into it in this recording right now. You know what I'm talking about. But of course, it's a twin rainbow. After all of that, I'm just cracking up to myself. Of course, I don't say anything because that's just what you need to do, guys. Keep it to yourself, okay? Enjoy the people you're around. They don't need to know about this crap. And trust me, more and more, they're going to bring it up because of this fake conspiracy stuff that's been pumped out there. It's in the presidency of the United States of America now, and many of its governmental organizations are headed by actual conspiracy theorists. Like, it's all out there, and they will talk about it to you now. But just, you don't need to bring it up. Just do what I'm telling you. Just be yourself. Remember how you used to be before you learned any of this stuff, and go back to that. but do it in a much wiser way, okay? Humble yourself. But bigger than the whole Oz stuff and the rainbow twin and all of that, it was just this thing that's like, yeah, I mean, that's life, man. That's life on planet Earth. I didn't create it. I have no idea what this is. I have no idea what we're doing here. It all is just insane. Like I said, the complexity of the interwoven threads of fate and free will and everything that transpires on a daily basis. I mean, it's the same as the cells in your body and how your body coordinates all of that every second that you're alive. I mean, if you thought about the complexity of your body and everything that's going on and how it's all working, your head would blow, right? You can't even fathom how complex your body is. And it all seems very natural from the perspective of your conscious awareness. And that's what's going on with us inside of whatever this is, right? It's just we're a cell in the body in this context of planet Earth. And we see the effects, but it's like we can't comprehend the complexity of it. In the same way that your cell can feel a lot of what's going on and understands its role and maybe even has its own illusion of sorts that it's experiencing along the lines that we're experiencing it here. As opposed to just, hanging out in your body and knowing that, just waiting to get what it needs to do what it does. We're doing a similar thing, and for whatever reason, it's storm clouds roll in, but then there's also the rainbow that comes out at the end. Sometimes. You experience both, and I can't explain why, and I can't explain how it's fair that some people have more rainbows than other people, and some people have more clouds, and the ratios don't seem to be fair, at least from our limited perspective. But again, I have no idea how those ratios are playing into larger threads that are bigger plans. And maybe when you get out of the experience, you see the role you played and what you perceived at the time to be dark, dark, dark storm clouds. And you are so proud that you got to do that because of what it led to in the future. I mean, there's so many permutations going on. And every moment you're alive, you have a chance to just express this awe of experiencing all of this. And what more could you ask for? Okay? Yes, I understand it's very difficult to be alive right now. Everything is so expensive. It's just difficult to exist. But none of that matters in the grand scheme of things. I'm alive, man. My body works. I can interact with people and have these amazing experiences, and then in the next moment, I'm calling them NPCs. Like, come on, man. What are you doing? Because that's just what it is. It's this mix of the storm clouds and the rainbows. I don't know what to say other than just suck it up and deal with the clouds when they're out. Just suck it up and deal with it and cherish the rainbows when they show themselves and appear. And those rainbows are just as short-lived as everything else, right? They're not there for long. They dissipate very quickly. It's something you're in awe of momentarily, and then it's back to reality. And that's what being in connection with that which created you is as well. You get these moments of clarity, and maybe even sometimes that's delusion, or you were misled by that which is in control of this world currently. It does things to fool you, and sometimes it's not what you thought it was. Whatever, right? That's all a part of it. Suck it up. It's not that big of a deal, right? People have it a lot worse than you do, okay? Most of you anyway, right? I can't presume that I know the condition of every single person listening to this, but I will assume most of you, if you have ears to hear this, are doing pretty good, okay? So that's all I got. Nothing profound. The same thing I've been saying in a lot of these. It's just a different context to put it in. where maybe you can think about all the things that transpired and all the people that came before you and give yourself and others just a little bit more grace in terms of perceiving their actions and what they say and the whole thing. And the majority of people, myself included, are insane. We do insane things. It's okay. We're going to continue to do insane things even after we become aware that we are insane. That's how insane it is. It's like any other addiction. I mean, the insanity is an addiction in and of itself. You're addicted to everything that that thing required in the world. And so it continues longer than it should because you keep going back to those things. And that's more than just substances, right? That's personal relationships and jobs and everything that goes along with that. You continue these things that produce the same results. And I suppose that's where that saying about insanity came from. Expecting the different thing is the insanity. When you continue to do the same thing over and over again. I don't know. That's all I got. I wanted to say the word vibe again just because I feel like we need to reclaim that word. It has been taken from us. That word is originally an understanding of frequency and how the sound wave vibrations are involved in the underlying structural lattice of creation itself. And everything is interacting within that lattice in a way where the vibration changes the structure of the matter. Okay, this is cymatics. And they stole that vibe word from us and they turned it into this thing that's something everybody uses now. And so it's kind of lost its meaning as it was originally intended. Or at least as the original understanding goes. See, even that silence was a vibe, right? I could have just let that go on a little bit longer, maybe. And the silence produces the space for thinking. It dissipates matter. Hopefully that makes sense now, how the sound wave vibrations do that. Every time I start speaking again, it kind of inserts those vibrations into your stream of consciousness, and it creates structures that you turn into these imaginative concepts. This is the thinking process, and then the silence returns you to the baseline. It's almost like those medical monitors that monitor your heartbeat, right? And you see the vibration of the heartbeat, and then when it stops, it makes that loud beeping noise. But you get what I'm saying. It's the straight line. I'm using it as a metaphor for the images, right? So you have the vibration of the heartbeat, which is producing the images in your mind in terms of the sound wave vibrations. Then when you stop speaking, it's just the line again. And you have the space to think on your own. And so that's getting back a little bit to the idea about why things are presented the way they are presented, because it's a vibration that's trying to alter the thoughts you're imagining. And when it does that, you bring it into reality, and that's your vibratory state as you interact with other people. And then through your vibration, you discredit the thing you're discussing, even if it's the truth on some level. That is what controlled opposition is for. And yes, even some of them will pretend to be doing what I'm doing right here, right? They'll pretend to be tuning you along these lines. I mean, this is why they say stay tuned as it relates to television, and why some people will use that phrase, because they're giving you a subconscious embedded command to stay tuned to them, even though they might be using it in the context of like, stay tuned to what's going on. No, what they really mean is stay tuned to me and what I'm infusing into you. obviously not everybody who has ever used that phrase has the intent I'm describing here. I'm talking about controlled opposition that uses that phrase knowingly, knowing what they're doing. And that gets back to the genetic imprint. The blueprint is a sound wave vibration of sorts, right? It's something that happens in the moment that is so profound that the vibration imprints itself into DNA as a memory that's stored. So, like the example I gave at the beginning, where my grandfather was in a plane that broke in half in midair and he had to parachute out of it, that was stored immediately into his DNA. And he passed it on to everybody that came through him afterwards. We all have that infused into us on some level. And I'm sure that affected me in so many different ways throughout my life without even knowing it. Especially dealing with high pressure situations and stuff like that. But that's similar to my voice right now, or anybody else's voice, that sound wave vibration that creates a thought in your stream of consciousness. Well, this is just on a different scale. It's a genetic imprint on the molecular level of DNA that subtly and subconsciously informs your stream of consciousness and produces those images in a different way, but it's similar. It's just in a way that you wouldn't readily observe it as you would consciously in the moment when I'm speaking or anybody else is speaking. Anyways, I was hoping that I would end on something relatively profound compared to what I've been describing so far. I didn't quite get there. However, hopefully I did at least a little bit of what I intended in terms of just getting you to stop and think for a second about, hey, just relax, all right? Just, even if it's for the next 30 seconds, take a deep breath, whatever's going on in your life, just let it go for a moment, all right? I give you the permission to do that. And if you want to pick it back up as soon as this ends, then hey, that's fine. Just take it easy for a moment. And know that this too shall pass, whatever it is. I know everybody's dealing with their own version of something that is stressing you out. Whether it's something in your own life or everything you're viewing on these screens, who knows? Okay, I let that go for a long time, the silence, to try to prove that point to myself when I listen back to this. I don't know if I'll leave it in, but that was the idea, right? Take the deep breath, recognize the silence, and then go back into the world and, be the guy that somebody just wants to sit down and have a chat with, or the girl. Because I know there's like 2 of you listening to these videos. They're very male-dominated subject matter. Anyways, that's it. I'm out of here. Bye.